Chapter 1. The Vice-Chancellor's Dilemma. In the heart of England, during the reign of Queen Elizabeth I, there was a man whose influence stretched across the land, revered and feared in equal measure. His name was Dr. Benjamin Lacy, a figure whose intellect was unrivaled and whose ambition soared high above the spires of the ancient colleges of Cambridge University. For many years, Dr. Lacy served as the Vice-Chancellor of this prestigious institution, a title that carried with it the power to shape minds, to control ideas, and to dictate the course of future generations. But though his mind was sharp, his soul was fragile, torn between the shifting tides of faith that swept through England like an unstoppable current. The age in which he lived was one of turmoil, a time when the very foundation of religious truth was being questioned, reshaped, and at times brutally enforced. The Church of England, established by King Henry VIII, was still in a state of flux, caught between Catholic traditions and Protestant reforms. And in this climate of uncertainty, Dr. Lacy found himself caught between the two worlds, never fully embracing one or the other. His life, marked by profound intellectual achievement, was overshadowed by a quiet, persistent doubt. He had converted to Catholicism as a young man, only to abandon the faith as the winds of change shifted toward Protestantism. His soul, it seemed, could never find rest. At each crossroads in his life, he embraced the faith of the moment, shifting his allegiances as needed to maintain his place in the political and religious landscape of the time. And yet, with each conversion, the weight of uncertainty grew heavier. Dr. Lacy's friends and colleagues, many of whom were devout Protestants, often marveled at his ability to conform to whatever faith was in vogue. They whispered that his devotion was not to God, but to power, that he worshipped not in churches, but in the halls of academia and the court of Queen Elizabeth herself. Yet despite these rumors, there was something undeniably magnetic about him. His speeches, delivered with such passion, could stir the hearts of those in attendance, drawing even the most steadfast into the vortex of his logic. He was, after all, a scholar, a philosopher, a man of reason, qualities that seemed to transcend religious divisions. But beneath his public persona, something more profound stirred. Dr. Lacy was not simply a man caught between faiths, he was a man caught between two worlds. The conflict within him was not merely theological, but spiritual. He had come to believe that his fate, his very essence, was bound to a greater cosmic order, one that defied the narrow definitions of heaven and earth. And yet, try as he might, he could not see the full picture. He could not understand his place in the grand scheme of things. He was neither here nor there, neither damned nor saved. He was suspended, hanging between two realms, waiting for something, anything that would give him clarity. It was in the midst of this inner turmoil that Dr. Lacy found himself invited to a royal banquet at the court of Queen Elizabeth I. It was a grand affair, held in honor of the Queen's latest triumphs, and Dr. Lacy, as one of the most prominent figures in England's intellectual circles, was expected to attend. There, in the dazzling light of the court, surrounded by nobles and courtiers, Dr. Lacy was about to come face to face with a figure who, in his own way, would challenge the very foundation of his beliefs. The Jester, known only as Will, was a peculiar man, short in stature, quick-witted, and possessed of a humor that could cut through the thickest of pretensions. He was no ordinary fool. Beneath his jests there seemed to lie an unsettling wisdom, a strange awareness of the world's deeper truths. He often mocked the very things that the courtiers held most dear, their power, their faith, and their status. But it was in his mockery of Dr. Lacey's spiritual uncertainty that he would deliver his most memorable jest. As the evening wore on, with the laughter of the court ringing in the air and goblets filled with wine, the jester approached Dr. Lacey. His eyes gleamed with a mischievous light, and a smile tugged at the corners of his lips. Without warning, he turned to the Vice-Chancellor, and loud enough for those nearby to hear, made a comment that would echo in Dr. Lacey's mind for years to come. "You, sir," the jester said, his voice tinged with a note of mockery, "are neither heaven nor earth, but hang betwixt both, a soul adrift in the vast expanse, neither damned nor saved, but forever wavering between the two." The courtiers laughed, but Dr. Lacey felt a cold shiver run down his spine. It was as though the jester had peered into the deepest recesses of his soul and spoken aloud the very truth that had tormented him for years. He had heard many jests in his time, but none that cut so deeply, none that so perfectly encapsulated his spiritual confusion. It was as though the jester had, in that fleeting moment, revealed a cosmic truth, one that could not be easily ignored. But what Dr. Lacey did not know was that the jester's words were not just a jest, they were a prophecy, one that would lead him down a dark and twisted path, a path that would challenge his very understanding of reality. As the night wore on, Dr. Lacey could not shake the feeling that the jester's words had somehow shifted the balance of his existence. The joke, seemingly innocuous, had struck a chord deep within him, stirring something ancient and primal. He was neither heaven nor earth, the jester had said, and as the night drew to a close, Dr. Lacey could not help but wonder if the jester had, in that fleeting moment, seen the very thing that he himself had been blind to, the true nature of his soul, suspended in a space that was neither here nor there, waiting for a reckoning that was yet to come. Chapter 2. The Jester's Curse.
The days following the banquet were a blur for Dr. Benjamin Lacey. His thoughts were consumed by the jester's words, neither heaven nor earth, but betwixt both. At first, he dismissed them as mere jest, the kind of playful mockery one might expect from a court fool, meant to entertain and disarm. But no matter how much he tried to push the thought from his mind, it lingered like a shadow, creeping into the corners of his consciousness. Dr. Lacey's life had always been governed by reason. He was a man of logic, of faith that could be understood and explained. But in those moments of solitude, when the bustle of the university or the court faded into the background, he could not escape the unsettling feeling that something had changed. The world around him seemed to flicker, as if the very fabric of reality was trembling under the weight of some unknown force. He found himself retreating to his study more often, seeking solace in the ancient texts that had once brought him peace. But even the sacred scriptures, once a source of certainty, now felt hollow. He read passages over and over, yet the words seemed to slip through his grasp like water through his fingers. They no longer offered the clarity they once had, and in their place doubt settled like a dense fog. His colleagues noticed the change. The once confident and commanding Vice-Chancellor now appeared distracted, his mind seemingly adrift. Conversations with him became awkward,
as if they were talking to a man who was present in body, but absent in spirit. One of his closest friends, Dr. William Hawkes, a fellow academic and a staunch Protestant, was particularly concerned. He had known Lacey for years, and though their theological differences had always been a source of debate, he had always respected his friend's intellect and conviction. But now he saw something else, a deep, unsettling turmoil. "Benjamin, you seem unwell," Dr. Hawkes remarked one afternoon, as they sat in a quiet corner of the university's dining hall. "You've not been yourself lately. Is something troubling you?" Lacey looked up, his eyes weary and distant. He had not realized how much he had changed. The only sharp, focused gaze was now clouded with confusion. I don't know, William," Dr. Lacey replied, his voice tinged with frustration. "There is something I cannot explain, a feeling, a sense that something is wrong, that the world is not as it seems." Dr. Hawkes raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean, not as it seems?" Lacey hesitated, then leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Do you believe in the supernatural, that the world is governed by forces beyond our understanding?" The question took Dr. Hawkes off guard. He was a man of reason, a devout Protestant who believed in the power of Scripture and divine providence. The idea of unseen forces manipulating the world seemed to him both irrational and heretical. "Of course not," Dr. Hawkes replied, shaking his head. "Our faith, our reason, these are the forces that guide us. Anything beyond that is mere superstition." Lacey stared at him, his gaze intense. "But what if I told you that I believe there is something more, something beyond our reason, beyond our faith, something that exists between heaven and earth?" Hawkes frowned, sensing that his friend was on the verge of something dangerous. "Benjamin, you seem not yourself. Perhaps you need rest. You've been under a great deal of pressure lately, but don't let your mind wander down such paths." But Lacey could not ignore the gnawing feeling that had taken root in his soul. The Jester's words echoed in his mind relentlessly. Neither heaven nor earth, but betwixt both. What did it mean? Why did it feel as though he were being pulled into something far greater than himself? That night, unable to sleep, Lacey wandered the quiet halls of Cambridge. The moonlight filtered through the high windows, casting long shadows across the stone floors. He made his way to the chapel, where he often went to seek solace, to pray for answers. But tonight, as he entered the darkened space, he felt an eerie presence, as though the very air was thick with something unseen. The faint sound of footsteps echoed in the nave, but when Lacey turned, no one was there. A chill ran down his spine. He felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. He could not shake the feeling that he was being watched. And then, as if in answer to his unspoken question, the doors of the chapel creaked open, and there stood a figure, a small, hunched man, dressed in the garb of a court jester. His face was hidden behind a mask, but the jester's eyes gleamed with an unsettling intelligence. It was the same jester from Queen Elizabeth's court, the one who had mocked Lacey with his words at the banquet. "Do you seek answers, Vice-Chancellor?" the jester asked, his voice soft, yet carrying an unsettling weight. Lacey froze. "What are you? What do you want?" he demanded, his voice trembling despite himself. The jester smiled, a thin, knowing grin. The world is full of paths. Some are walked by the living, and some by those who are neither living nor dead. He stepped closer, his movements eerily fluid. I know your doubts, your struggles. You are neither here nor there, and I too am caught between worlds. Lacey stepped back, his heart pounding. What are you? What do you want? The jester's eyes glinted with mischief. I offer you a choice to see beyond the veil, to understand the forces that bind this world together. But be warned, knowledge comes with a price. Lacey felt the weight of the decision pressing down on him. He had spent his life seeking knowledge, seeking truth. But what was the price? What price would he have to pay for answers that could forever alter his understanding of reality? The jester's smile widened, as if he had read Lacey's thoughts. The choice is yours, Vice-Chancellor. Will you continue to wander in uncertainty, or will you embrace the truth of what lies between heaven and earth? And with that, the jester vanished into the shadows, leaving Lacey standing alone in the darkened chapel, his mind swirling with the implications of the encounter. Was this merely a dream, a figment of his imagination, or had he truly encountered something beyond the realm of the living?
Chapter 3. The Unraveling.
In the weeks that followed his strange encounter with the jester, Dr. Benjamin Lacey's life descended into a spiral of obsession and confusion. The once predictable rhythm of his days was disrupted by strange dreams, visions, and inexplicable events. His mind, once a fortress of logic, had become a battleground between reason and the disturbing truths he could not ignore. He continued to attend to his duties as Vice-Chancellor of Cambridge, though it was clear to all who interacted with him that something was amiss. He walked the halls with a distracted air, his eyes often distant, his movements absent-minded. His colleagues remarked on his unkempt appearance, the bags beneath his eyes, the tremor in his hand as he signed documents. But Lacey could not bring himself to care. The quest for knowledge, for answers, consumed him entirely. He spent hours in his study, poring over ancient texts, scriptures, and treatises on the supernatural. It was as if the world of academia no longer held the answers he sought. He had long ago exhausted the intellectual resources available to him, and now, in his desperation, he turned to obscure texts, grimoires, forbidden manuscripts, and the forgotten writings of long-dead mystics. He read of creatures that moved between worlds, of souls trapped in limbo, of doors that opened to realms beyond the veil of human understanding. But the more he read, the more his mind twisted. It became clear to him that his connection to the jester was not a mere coincidence. There was something far more profound at play, something ancient, a force that existed beyond the mortal realm, a force that had been drawing him toward it for years. The jester, he realized, was not simply a man. He was a manifestation of this force, a guide, or perhaps even an agent of something far more terrifying. It was one night as the clock struck midnight when Lacey's world shifted forever. He sat alone in his study, the flickering candlelight casting long shadows against the walls. The air felt thick, suffocating, as if the very atmosphere were charged with an unseen presence. He had been reading a passage from a book about the Twilight realm, a place where the living and the dead intertwined. The words on the page seemed to shimmer before his eyes, their meanings shifting and sliding like oil on water. Suddenly, the door to his study creaked open. Lacey's heart skipped a beat. No one had entered the room since he began his research. He turned, half expecting to see the Jester standing in the doorway, but instead it was a figure. A tall, gaunt man, his face hidden in shadow. The man stepped into the light, revealing himself to be none other than Dr. Hawkes, his old friend. But there was something wrong with him. His eyes, usually sharp and clear, were now dull, sunken, as if he had not slept in days. His skin had taken on an ashen hue, and his clothes hung loosely on his frame. But Lacey could not bring himself to care. The quest for knowledge, for answers, consumed him entirely. He had been seeking knowledge, but some knowledge comes at a price. You've crossed a threshold, Benjamin. The Jester, the force behind him, he is not what you think he is. He is not merely a fool or a harbinger of cosmic truths. He is a gatekeeper, a conduit to something far darker. And now that you've crossed the line, you are no longer in control. Lacey felt a chill run down his spine. What have I done? Dr. Hawkes stepped closer, his voice urgent. You have invoked the Twilight realm, Benjamin, a place where the living and the dead intermingle. You are neither here nor there, just as the Jester said. But this is no joke, Benjamin. This is your undoing. You are trapped between worlds, and the longer you remain there, the more your soul will wither. The Jester, he is a manifestation of that realm, a being that feeds on those who wander too close to its edges. Lacey staggered back, horrified, but it was already too late. He felt a sharp pang in his chest, a sensation like something pulling at him from the inside. He gasped, his vision blurring as the room seemed to spin. And then, in the blink of an eye, he was no longer in his study. He found himself standing in a vast, desolate landscape, an endless expanse of fog and shadow. The air was thick with a sense of emptiness, of something waiting. The ground beneath his feet felt unstable, as if it were constantly shifting. He was no longer in Cambridge, no longer in his world at all. And then, as if on cue, the Jester appeared before him, his small form emerging from the mist like a wisp of smoke. He stood, grinning, as though he had been expecting Lacey all along. You have come, Vice-Chancellor, the Jester said, his voice both familiar and alien, as if it echoed from the very depths of Plime. You have come to claim your place between heaven and earth. Lacey's heart raced, his body trembling. What is this place? Where am I? The Jester's eyes gleamed. This is the Twilight realm, where the living and the dead meet. This is where you belong, Vice-Chancellor. You are neither here nor there, but you are not without purpose. You are a bridge, a conduit for the forces that dwell in between. And now you must decide. Will you embrace your fate, or will you return to the world of the living and risk losing everything? Lacey's mind reeled. He wanted to scream, to demand answers, but the words caught in his throat. He could feel himself slipping, his very sense of self becoming unmoored from reality. He was caught between two worlds, two realities, and there seemed to be no escape. You will stay here, the Jester said, as if he read Lacey's thoughts. You will stay until you understand what it means to be neither heaven nor earth, but something that transcends both. And as Lacey stood on the edge of the abyss, he realized the terrible truth. He had not merely sought knowledge, he had sought something far darker. And now he was bound to it, trapped in a realm between life and death, between the living and the dead, unable to escape.
Chapter 4: The Reckoning. Dr. Benjamin Lacey's mind shattered beneath the weight of the Twilight realm. What was once his understanding of the world, rigid, controlled by logic and faith, was now a mere illusion. The mist of the realm pressed against his skin, the air thick with the scent of ancient decay. Time itself felt distorted, stretching and contracting in ways that defied any rational explanation. The Jester watched him with that same cryptic grin, as if the spectacle of Lacey's unraveling was nothing more than an amusement, a game of cosmic proportions. He was no longer merely a fool, but a harbinger, a guide for those who dared to venture too close to the edges of existence. "You see, Vice-Chancellor," the Jester's voice echoed through the fog, "you are not the first to come here, nor will you be the last. Many have crossed the threshold, searching for truths that lie beyond the mortal realm. And like you, they have been bound to this place, neither alive nor dead, suspended between the worlds." Lacey's thoughts were a maelstrom of confusion. His body felt weightless, as though he were floating in an abyss. The very ground beneath him seemed to shift, pulling him deeper into the void. The Jester's words reverberated in his mind, but they made no sense. What was this place? How had he come to this point? He had merely sought knowledge, answers to the gnawing doubts that had plagued him for years. But now the very knowledge he had uncovered had become his prison. "Why am I here?" Lacey demanded, his voice raw, trembling. "What is this place? What have you done to me?" The Jester's grin widened, but there was no humor in it, only an unsettling depth of knowledge. "This place is not mine to control," the Jester said, his tone turning almost reverent. "It is the space between life and death, between time and eternity. It is the place where all souls must pass, where the living cannot stay and the dead cannot go. You are neither here nor there, just as you were warned. And yet you chose to seek the truth beyond what is given. Now the price must be paid." Lacey recoiled, his mind racing. The price, the cost. He had heard the warning countless times, but it had never seemed real until now. The truth was not just a matter of philosophy or religion. It was something deeper, something that transcended the very nature of existence. And now that he had seen it, he could never turn back. "Is this my fate then?" Lacey asked, his voice barely a whisper. "To remain here forever, caught between the worlds?" The Jester stepped closer, his eyes gleaming with an unnatural light. "Fate is an illusion, Benjamin. It is not the realm you should fear, but the truth that lies within you. You came here searching for answers, and you found them. But what will you do with them? Will you embrace the truth, or will you fight it, trying to return to the world you once knew?" Lacey's mind was a fog, his thoughts fractured. He had always believed that knowledge was the key to everything, knowledge of the world, of the divine, of the self. But now, as he stood in this place, on the edge of reality, he saw the horrifying truth. Knowledge had brought him here, but it was knowledge that could never be fully understood. It was a force beyond reason, a force that could not be tamed. "Please," Lacey whispered,
his voice trembling with a mixture of fear and desperation. "I don't want to be here. I want to return. I want to live." The jester tilted his head as though contemplating the very nature of Lacey's plea. "Return?" he repeated, his voice laced with a strange finality. "You cannot return, Vice-Chancellor. You have passed beyond the veil. You are no longer a part of the world you once knew. You are neither living nor dead, caught in the in-between." Lacey's heart hammered in his chest, a cold sweat breaking out across his skin. He tried to move, to step away from the jester, but his legs felt like lead. The world around him seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy, as if reality itself was bending and twisting around him. Then something inside him snapped. A realization, terrifying in its simplicity, washed over him. This was it. This was the cost of knowledge. The truths he had sought, those deep, ancient secrets, were not meant for mortal minds. They were forces that defied reason and understanding, and now he had become part of them, a part of this eternal liminal space. He collapsed to his knees, his hands clutching his head as the weight of the revelation crushed him. The jester's laughter echoed in his ears, cold and mocking. "Do you understand now?" the jester asked, his voice dripping with a cruel satisfaction. "You are not meant to know the answers, Benjamin. You are meant to wander, lost between the realms. This is your place, betwixt both." Lacey's world began to crumble. The walls of the Twilight realm dissolved into nothingness, and for a moment it felt as though he were falling through an endless void. He reached out, his hands grasping at the air, but there was nothing to hold on to, nothing to cling to. And then, in that moment of despair, the world shifted again. The fog began to part, and a blinding light appeared before him. The jester, no longer smiling, looked on as the light grew brighter, consuming everything in its path. "This is your choice, Benjamin," the jester said, his voice soft now, almost sad. "You can embrace the light, the truth that lies beyond, or you can remain here, trapped in the darkness of your own mind. The choice is yours." Lacey hesitated, the weight of his decision pressing down on him. For a moment he felt the pull of the light, the promise of escape, of peace. But as he reached out toward it, the jester's words echoed in his mind. "You are neither heaven nor earth, but betwixt both." And in that moment, Lacey understood. He was not meant to escape. He was not meant to return to the world of the living. He was meant to stay here, in this space between life and death, between heaven and earth, a soul adrift, forever wandering, neither saved nor damned. With a final, resigned breath, Lacey stepped into the light, and as the darkness faded away, he found himself once again suspended in that place between the realms, caught forever in the Twilight realm, neither here nor there, his fate sealed by the very knowledge he had sought.